Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vinnie Eastwood Show for the little Kiwi Collaborator episode, and today we have the famous, illustrious, and various other nice adjectives guest, the brightest woman I know, incidentally of the same nomenclature, Penny Bright. Welcome to the program.
Very flattering, get you everywhere, do go on.
Hopefully not everywhere. Speaking of people who are going nowhere, Banksy. I've been wanting to talk to you about this for weeks and been unable to get a hold of you to my malignant frustration.
Well, that was a shock and awe decision on, what was it, the 5th of June. There was actually, hardly anyone believed that Banks was going to be found guilty. In fact, I got a free coffee off one of the journos, and I'm still at 50 cents by another one who didn't think that Banks, neither of them thought that Banks would actually be convicted. And although there's this bit of dancing around on the head of a pin as to whether or not when you're found guilty in a criminal indictment you're actually convicted, well, the big deal is Banks is gone burger. He has now left the house. So that website, www.johnhasgone.com, woohoo! Yep, job done.
And what's the potential consequences for him? I mean, what's the sentencing expected to be like?
Well, 1st of August is when Banks is going to be sentenced. Well, it'll be interesting. I mean, he's left Parliament. Myself, I personally think he should do time. Sometime. I mean, if you look at Taito Philip Field, who was a New Zealand MP who was found guilty of bribery and corruption and also perverting the course of justice, he was jailed for 6 years. And yet, when you look at what he did, I mean, in terms of proportionality, hello. I mean, I think that Banks should do, even if it was 3 months or something just to show, listen, just because you're a former Minister of the Crown, you are not a form of protected species, and the rule of law equally applies to you. And given that Banks was the leader of the ACT Party who made such a big deal about personal responsibility, I mean, for God's sake, I've never met any person whose signature's been so bloody meaningless.
Because of his ability to avoid having any responsibility.
Well, exactly right. I mean, it's not like I haven't had a go. I mean, about, don't forget, 3 years ago in 2011, I stood against John Banks in Epsom, and the reason why I did that was to try and help cast a public spotlight on how come Acts One Law for All hadn't applied to particularly himself, but also the other former leader of the ACT Party, Don Brash. They were all equally directors of Hewlett Wealth Management, New Zealand Limited. They, as directors, 3 of them had all equally signed misleading registered prospectuses, but only ever one director, Peter Hewlett, was ever charged. Now, this is like when you drive 60 Ks in the 50 K area, this was a strict liability offence. Should have been charged. Well, goodness me. I mean, I tried my hardest. The former Securities Commission never charged Banks or Brash. I asked the Finance Markets Authority to charge them. Nope. The police, nope. Serious Fraud Office, nope. Got a petition into Parliament asking for an inquiry into these Hewlett prosecutions. And what happened eventually was that the Commerce Select Committee, of which 5 out of 9 were National Party MPs, we have no matters to bring before the House.
Can I make a statement that I came up with off the back of some of your research, Penny? New Zealand is so corrupt that no corruption ever gets reported because all the people who are supposed to expose it and charge people for it are also corrupt.
Well, I've just got a little development on that one. You may recall that I did a lot of research on how basically Sky City Casino have effectively set up a money laundering factory in the heart of Auckland City, and nobody who's anybody has done any due diligence on the increased risk of money laundering, and that applies to the Prime Minister, the Minister of Economic Development, the Organised and Financial Crime Agency of New Zealand, Ofcans, Auckland Central Police or Auckland Council. Not one of them, and I've got the paper trail to prove it, not one of them did any due diligence on the increased risk of money laundering with the Sky City deal, which, Sky City give us a convention centre and they get another 230 pokie machines. And, of course, that deal that was done sort of by the Prime Minister over dinner and over the phone in all manner of improper ways, which the Deputy Auditor General said was not done properly. And then, of course, you had the legislation to entrench the deal. Well, the bottom line is that I made a complaint to the Auditor General to please do an inquiry as to why the body that's tasked with helping to fight money laundering, Organised and Financial Crime Agency of New Zealand, Ofcans, why they hadn't done any due diligence. And she didn't do one and danced around on the head of a pin, it was policy when it wasn't, because Ofcans, they get money from Vote Police. They get money, about 10 million a year to do a job, and their job is to help stop money laundering. Well, they hadn't done their job, so Auditor General, get off your butt and do an inquiry. No. And then I find out the reason why the Auditor General hadn't been involved in this earlier inquiry into how the Prime Minister, etc., had done it, because she had a small shareholding in Sky City. And guess what? She was a shareholder in Sky City at a time I asked her to do an inquiry into a matter involving Sky City. There's a word for that, and it begins with C. Corrupt. Anyway, I petitioned Parliament for an inquiry as to why the Auditor General didn't reveal this conflict of interest, and it went to the Finance and Expenditure Select Committee. We have no matters to bring before the House. You couldn't make this shit up. Oh, sorry, you couldn't make...
Okay, for your life, Penny, I don't give a shit.
But seriously, because, I've raised this. I've just come back from the G20 anti-corruption conference where I went with my friend Grace Hayden. So, we were at Griffith University in Brisbane for a couple of days, and oh my God, we blew the whistle till our eyeballs bled, basically. And anyway, in discussions, as you do with these experts, as soon as I mentioned that our Auditor General, Lynn Provost, actually had a shareholding in Sky City Casino, their eyebrows were going through their foreheads. It's like, what? In itself, just the fact that she was a shareholder in Sky City in a gaming institute, it's, that is just in itself
Penny,
very dodgy.
I'm not sure if this is entirely relevant, but I was really drunk one night and I was talking to a guy from Slovakia.
Yeah.
And I was talking to him about New Zealand corruption. And he says, oh, you guys don't know what corruption is, okay? In Slovakia, you go out, you want to buy a loaf of bread or something, you have to pass by some kind of mafioso little official, etc., in order to go and do something. They control everything, and they do it really obviously too. And all the governments are just puppets, and things like that to the mafia in my country. And I said, well, you make an interesting point. The only difference between Slovakia being controlled by the mafia and New Zealand being governed by the New Zealand government is that people think that the New Zealand government isn't a mafia. Beyond that, there actually isn't much of a difference.
Well, the fact of the matter is that basically corruption can be divided into two main types. Petty corruption, where you pay the cop $50 to get off a ticket sort of thing, or grand corruption, think corruption that happens at a very high level. And although apparently petty corruption is actually increasing in New Zealand, the reality is we are rotten with corruption when it comes to grand corruption at the highest level. And I'll do a little quiz for your listeners. Have you ever heard of a form of corruption which is endemic in this country known as state capture? State capture. What's state capture? State capture is where vested interests get their way at the policy level before the law is passed. And that's how the Business Roundtable used to do it in New Zealand. Roger Kerr, who used to be the CEO of the New Zealand Business Roundtable, he used to focus specifically on policy, okay? And then what happens is when you check with the policy analysts before legislation goes through the House, you check with whom are they consulting. Because what happens is you get all manner of vested interests being treated as if they are independent third parties or they're asked their opinion. Then it goes through the parliamentary sausage machine and comes out a law the other side, and that's where they get their way, focusing at the policy level, okay? That is one form of grand corruption which is endemic in this country. The other one is post-separation employment. The more slang name for that's the revolving door. And this is where people go from public office to the private sector without any quarantine period, any like time off. For example, having like a 18 months or 2 year period from going from public office, like especially if you're like a minister, to going to a job in the private sector like a lobbyist or working in some institution where you could be seen to be using contacts or information that you got as a result of your public service job in the private sector. That revolving door in New Zealand is on permanent rotation, both at central and local government level. And a real good example of that is the former Minister of Justice and Commerce, Simon Power. Now, when he left in 2011, he went straight through that revolving door and ended up being the head of Westpac Private Bank. Well, Westpac are the bank the government uses. And if Simon Power had been a minister in any state or Commonwealth government in Australia, that would have been an offence. He would not have been allowed by law to do that.
Supplementary, he also signed off an illegal investigation of Alan Hubbard's company, which was at the time one of the most valued companies in the South Island, against the advice of Treasury, mind you. And guess who was the prime beneficiary in the seizure of those assets and the on-selling of the like? Westpac Corporate Banking. Where did Simon Power wind up working directly after signing off that investigation?
That's one I didn't know. But I tell you what, here's the secret. It's follow the dollar and always go to source and look at the connections. All right? Look at the connections between people. But I'll be campaigning against John Key in Helensville. And, of course, the great thing about Helensville is that the boundaries of Helensville are within the super city boundaries. Well, in this last year's Auckland mayoral race, I mean, I polled fourth with nearly 12,000 votes, and a number of people who voted for me will have come from that area that's within the Helensville electorate. So, anyway, so that's the plan, Stan, and especially in light of this bank's decision, which has been marvellous. It's been a shock and awe decision, and there will be repercussions. I mean, the police have said, well, basically the world's now changed. So how keen they will be just to say, we don't want to do anything to do with bribery and corruption complaints, we shall see. But what it's also doing is people are getting it. We need a genuinely independent Commission Against Corruption, and New Zealand needs to ratify the UN Convention Against Corruption. And that doesn't mean that, or that therefore makes us part of the New World Order as such. What it is, I mean, the UN is highly contradictory, but I mean, just like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that's a great document, that where you have best practice, where sovereign states, they choose to get their domestic legislation in order to be able to fight corruption. I don't have a problem with that. I don't. Yeah.
Well, I mean, just because you're taking one policy, like let's say somebody writes a book and it's a really bad, evil book or something like that, but there's this great phrase in it which is very telling and has wonderful truth about it, and is actually quite useful to convince people of things. You just don't tell them where the book came from or whatever, and nobody's the wiser. However, if you tell them where the book came from, they assume that you agree with everything else that's written in it.
Well, what I just want people to do is just think for yourself and use your brain, for God's sake.
Penny, can I make a point here? I'm sorry to cut you off, but what you've done, you and Mr. McCready, as well as anybody else involved with this effort to get the conviction of banks, is, to my mind, you've exposed the fact that all the regulatory agencies that would expose somebody with corruption are there to conceal it and protect the corrupt. and that a single person or a group of independent people who are not even being paid have the know-how and the capacity to use private prosecution, which is the tool that they've resisted using because they've been trying to appeal to these authorities the entire time without taking it on their own head and going out and taking the scum on themselves. Just my opinion. I might not know all the elements.
Well, the thing is this: that Graham will be the first to tell you that. There was a certain amount of sort of stumbling as he got the case into court. But by the same token, you learn by doing, and
you can't argue with results.
Well, you can't. It was massive, and what was interesting is that that it was myself and Lisa Prager. We were the two that actually took this complaint against banks to the police. And Trevor Mallard from the Labor Party, Labor Party, he made a complaint to the electoral officer because there's two different paths you can go down. And as soon as the electoral officer discovered that there'd been a complaint already lodged with the police, he just passed the parcel straight to them. But the thing is, what's really outrageous there in terms of the degree of, scumbaggery is that there were a number of pieces of legislation that were absolutely dependent on the vote of Dodgy John. The Public Finance Mixed Ownership Model Act, which allowed the partial privatisation of especially electricity assets, went through 61 votes to 60. Now, what really got me at that time, Lisa and I made our complaint to the cops on the 27th of April, 2012, and of course, the longer the cops sat on it, when did that bill got through on the 29th of June? So timing was everything. You know what I'm saying? So that if the cops had got off their butt and actually did the job that Graham Creedy ended up doing,
can I ask you?
It could have been a different outcome.
Was John Banks, by chance, a former police commissioner?
He was former Minister of Police.
Ah, okay. Just a stab in the dark here.
Well, seriously, eh? But what got me was the absolute arrogance, because all the time, Banks was like this little wooden robot, nothing to hide, nothing to fear. Well, why didn't he plonk his butt in the witness box? He didn't. And I was there every day in court, every day, because the role I played was, apart from originally being one of the complainants, I was actually helped Graham McCready by being the process server that drove out to the wilds of Coatesville and personally hand-delivered to Kim.com at the mansion his witness summons and the witness summons for his then head of security, Wayne Tempero. And earlier I'd gone to Simpson Grierson and handed the witness summons to Greg Tower, his lawyer, and I went round to Sky City and handed the witness summons to CEO for Sky City, Nigel Morrison, to his EA. So basically it was my work that got them into court to give the oral evidence which established there was a case to answer. So any time I have a brain fade now, it's understandable because I too have been to the .com mention. Just kidding. Yeah, anyway, so, yeah.
Penny, hats off to you. Congratulations.
And you're tricking. Thank you for me. Well, it's been fascinating stuff, it has. But what the difference between myself and Graham is I'm a born and bred political activist, and there is a difference because it's making a fuss in the court of public opinion, and that's where I have quite some expertise. And so making the fuss, and my good friend Jax Taylor, all the hours Jax and I put into having the banners up, just the two of us, in the wilds of Remuera Road. The not-so-honourable John Banks had all the class of a rat with a gold tooth, dodgy John Banks protected by Shonky Jonky. All of that helped keep the issue alive, and getting arrested in John Banks' electoral office to prove difference between how quickly the cops would act if Act sick the cops onto me versus how quickly they acting when we try to sick the cops onto him. The cops ended up dropping that case, but it got some publicity. You know what I mean? It's just that making the fuss, it's pivotal. If you don't have a fuss in the court of public opinion, then on matters like this, you're unlikely to have success in the court of law, is my opinion.
Well, I saw the difference between appealing to the authorities to help and do the jobs that they're supposed to versus just basically doing it yourself, and the success thereof.
Well, I think the thing is that...
I mean, you had to go through all that rigmarole and all of those kind of things to realise that you had to do it yourself, right?
Well, all that. And I mean, I think the thing that where Graham appealed to people was the fact that he's not known as a political activist, which he isn't, and also the fact that, I mean, he'd been successful in getting a private prosecution against Trevor Mallard, who's from Labour, and also Toe Henry. So the concept was he was seen as being, even-handed, a bit more even-handed, and he'd have a go. Plus the fact that we tried to get that corrupt Auckland mayor, and I will add in my considered opinion, but I mean Graham and I we tried to get action taken against Mayor Len Brown for bribery and corruption as well. I mean, his role over that Sky City stuff is just appalling.
I wonder, in your expertise, Penny, we've only got a couple of minutes left in the segment. Do you know, or could you verify any current political figurehead in New Zealand that actually has clout, power, position of authority, etc., that isn't corrupt? Like somebody who you could point at and go, that person right there, totally not corrupt. You can actually trust them.
What I would say is you got to, looking at things on an issue by issue basis. Well, I mean,
I'll take that as a no.
well, I don't want to be unfair here either, but I just think that. Well, with this upcoming election, I mean, a lot of people know, asking me, who are you going to vote for? And I said, well, at the moment I'm an undecided voter, and I am. But I know there'll be a lot of people who'll be very interested when I finally do make my mind up, but it won't be just on a whim and how I feel on the day. My track record is that I will have a series of questions that I'll ask the political parties and who ticks the most boxes. But by the same token, it's proven track record is very important because words are cheap and anybody can say anything. Take that Colin bloody Craig, give me a break. I mean, just that last point there on Colin Craig. I mean, the idea that someone who's basically done nothing for the public or the public interest rises like a phoenix out of the ashes when there's an election on and then vanishes without trace in between times, hasn't done anything you can point a stick at that's helped the public in any way, and then, National, I want you to stand someone down so I can have their seat. In my considered opinion, Colin Craig is, he's not honest, because I know what he said back in 2010 in the Auckland mayoralty when we were both candidates. When I asked him, do you believe in private water contracts of 35 years? No, he said, but 5 years is all right. But being a little bit pregnant. So in those days he did support water privatisation, but then you see he polls people to find out what they think and regurgitate what they want to hear, opposed to asset sales, which is privatisation. So I'm sorry, I don't trust Colin Craig. And the other thing is, when you look at his background, working with property developers, and he manages body corporates, what's your position on the capital gains tax, Colin? Because he's never given a straight answer on that one. And why am I the only one asking that question? What's his position on the capital gains tax? Because I think that's really where he's coming from. And, of course, if you end up, God help us, please no, but if you ended up in a situation where John Key would get some sort of alliance with Colin Craig, one of the deals is that Colin Craig and the Conservatives don't want a capital gains tax. They haven't said that, but that's what I predict would be on the horizon. Yeah.
Yep. So basically, ladies and gentlemen, we can't tell you who to vote for. We can tell you who probably is not a good idea to vote for because they're full of what would normally reside inside Peter Dunning. But the other element here is, you actually have to do your research. And as Penny says, if they ain't got a track record, you can't frickin' trust them straight out the gate. There's a number of new political parties and things of that nature that are coming up now. It's, as Penny's exposed earlier, not illegal to knowingly misrepresent your policies and then do the exact opposite of whatever they are as soon as people give you the power to do what you want.
Well, that's a fascinating thing because there isn't an equivalent of the Fair Trading Act for politicians, and that if in candidates' booklets for local government, what happens, basically, you can just write whatever you like. There's no requirement for any of that information to be accurate. But if you're a reporter reporting on what's said and you don't get whatever the candidates have said right, you're the one in trouble. Seriously. Yeah. Seriously, you just couldn't make this stuff up, eh? But anyway, folks, I am going to stand in Helensville to help keep the blowtorch on John Key. I do need some money to help out. I've just come back from this anti-corruption conference, which is $320 a week. It doesn't leave much money for the phone bills and the power bills and blah, blah, blah. So,
you should do what I'm doing, Penny, and I'll help you set up a PayPal thing so that people can just basically make a monthly contribution just to make sure that you're funded and you got the stuff that you need.
Well, the thing is that the election is it's 20th of September, is less than 3 months away. I need a station wagon. Doesn't matter as long as it's current registered and warranted. It doesn't have to be flash, but I need something that's big enough to put the hoardings in the back and then I can put signage on. If anyone's got one sitting in the shed,
or a van.
Then I suppose it could be a van.
Imagine one of those big, Toyota Hi-Ace vans with a huge, huge backlight.
I don't need anything big and flat. I mean, a station wagon would be fine. Like I say, it doesn't have to be flash, but as long as it's legal and or even the loan of for 3 months. But if but I want to put signage on it, so don't know how that's going to work with folks. But, if 200 people gave me $20, boy, that'd be a big help right now.
All right, Penny Bright. The website is waterpressure.wordpress.com. You're listening to the Vinnie Eastwood Show, listener-supported broadcasting, so if you want to keep ensuring these broadcasts keep going on and people who, have to go out there and actually work for a living, like Penny, actually get some of the coverage they deserve, unlike myself, I'm a lazy bastard sometimes. Anyway, go to thevinnieeastwoodshow.com and sign up today to give us $5 to $10 a month because all that does is really just pay the bills and everything. My wife actually did the finances, and I think between the two of us, we've lived off $13,000 in the last year. That's it's like a pitiful small amount.
Good on you, Vinny.
Yeah.
But I mean, the thing is that when you look at the monies some people get, it's about results for effort, eh? And it's, as usual, it's the masses who get off their asses that make history. You don't need a cast of thousands to make a difference. It's all about focus and timing.
Well, despite the fact that I have a very low budget, I did just go over the 3 million hits mark on my YouTube channel.
Wow.
And
good on you.
Now have nearly 15,000 subscribers, and the New Zealand Herald, with all their budget, everything that they've got behind them, as well as I think the country's 4th most visited website, certainly the top news site in the country, they only have less than 10,000 subscribers to their YouTube channel. So, yeah, like I said, you can't argue with results.
That's exactly right.
We'll see you again sometime, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for listening. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vinnie Eastwood Show. In a world so full of chaos and madness, you got to laugh about it, or you'll go friggin' nuts. It's an immutable truth. Kind of like me, except, I'm sort of like the truth that you can't put on mute, which for a lot of people is quite annoying, especially the guest. My very special guest, speaking of what today, is Mark from BluShield. Mark, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Vinny. Great to be here.
It's been a long time.
It's been a while, hasn't it?
Yeah. We shouldn't have left you without a dope beat to step two. Step two, That's an Aaliyah reference, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, especially the elder generation out there. You don't even know who Aaliyah is, so I didn't even clear it up for you. Anyway, Mark, speaking of BluShield, we've got a whole bunch of new products out, whole bunch of new banners and artworks and all of this sort of thing. And it's really starting to take off. And this is something I'm actually quite excited about. Not personally per se in terms of monetary gain, but in terms of the fact that it's a New Zealand company now starting to really branch out, go global, and really compete on the world market. I think this is sort of, just from a business perspective alone, a very cool opportunity.
Yes, well, things have evolved and taken shape, and of course, we listen to the market and what the market wants, and develop the products accordingly. And things are really going ahead. Let's
get into those details then. Could you perhaps give us a little bit of an idea of how things are going ahead, progressing, etc., and what BluShield does? The whole rundown.
Well, basically, there's 3 levels of products. We have a sensitive series, which is designed especially for those that are hypersensitive. And when you think of people as hypersensitive, you generally look at these people and say, well, okay, if you're hypersensitive, what makes you hypersensitive? So a lot of people out there really don't know what makes someone sensitive. Now, people with food allergies, gluten intolerances, this could be hay fever, asthma. Those people that are hypersensitive to those kind of things are generally classed as hypersensitive to electromagnetic fields. So that's from your Wi-Fi, smartphones, all these good gadgets today put out, as we know, radio frequencies. And people with those allergies and what have you tend to be quite sensitive and will feel the effects more so than the average person.
Well, so, I'd like to make a point here, is that I've looked at some of the studies, or rather been shown portions of the studies on people, and it turns out that whether or not you can feel the effect of EMF, and they've tested that, yes, people do actually in blind tests react to EMF and generators that are being turned on without their knowledge, so it's not in their head. But also, when they monitored the cellular reactions in people's bodies, that the exact same effect for those who are sensitive and can feel it and those who aren't. So regardless of whether or not you perceive radiation and EMF frequencies to be affecting you, they are.
This is right, Vinny. A lot of people out there probably are fairly insensitive. And maybe they may think that, oh, well, it doesn't affect me. I don't feel anything. Yeah, you're totally right. They probably don't feel anything, but they're still being affected at a cell level. And, of course, symptoms turn up. These symptoms vary from person to person and probably vary because of, their sensitivity or lack of sensitivity. But, a lot of people these days, I feel really fatigued and tired at the end of the day. You wonder why you've been on Trade Me for 5 hours. You wonder why you're feeling tired. Well, the computer's putting out a lot of EMF, and we're exposing ourselves every day to more and more EMF. As things gone on. We've got 4G now, which is WiMAX, which is a lot stronger than your 3G. So all these new phones coming out and all these new systems to make mobile phone systems faster and better are also putting out a lot more radiation. You got GPS in your car. You got Bluetooth on your phone, possibly a Bluetooth headset. If you think you're trying to escape a little bit of radiation from that, well, you're wrong. Bluetooth is just as bad as Wi-Fi. Of course, there's Wi-Fi in schools, and you've probably heard in America or even in Europe, I think there's starting to ban Wi-Fi in schools because of it's classed as a Class 2B carcinogen. So that means there's a possible cancer risk with Wi-Fi around. Now, a lot of people might have even heard of these smart meters that are coming out in America, and normally they're actually forced upon people. I think in New Zealand we still have a choice whether we want a smart meter.
Not really. I mean, you can go to alternative energy providers who don't use smart meters I believe there's two. I know that one of them's Trustpower, but I don't know if they do the rest. Trustpower also offers bundles, and they do all your phone, your power, internet, and water or something like that, all in the same bundle too. So there's one for people if you want to get rid of your smart meters. They believe, I think, that they were what was the words they used? Not cost effective, or didn't work in reducing your power consumption or charging you more effective bills, because smart meters also measure the what they call waste radiation, dirty electricity, stuff that comes off the wires, all this EMF frequency that Mark's talking about. This is waste electricity that's coming off all of your wires everywhere throughout your frickin' house and your cars and everything. And the smart meters charge you for that. The analog meters don't.
The smart meters are also giving off Wi-Fi too, so they're actually constantly sending back data to the power companies, and that's emitting radiation as well.
Well, they hide this. They hide this, Mark, by saying that they only broadcast for 45 seconds out of every day. While true, total 45 seconds, it's every 0.1 of a microsecond every couple of seconds. So it's constantly broadcasting all day with pings up to 32 kilometers in range for a single charge. Boom, so you have an entire neighborhood, or anywhere within 10, 15 kilometres of you or whatever, you're going to get everybody's smart meters in that whole area at one point once they're all installed.
Yeah, well, I mean, your neighbours might have one. How many neighbours do you have? You might be living in the middle of a nest of neighbours, and you might have 7 neighbours. There's 7 smart meters going, all these 7 lots of Wi-Fi. You're surrounded by it.
In some apartment blocks, all the power boxes and everything are all in the same place, and they might be at somebody's bedroom. So we've got reports of elderly women and things like that getting nosebleeds for no frickin' reason when they've got 8 smart meters on their bedroom window, and they can't even sleep in their bedrooms anymore. They have to take a mattress onto the floor during their golden years in their living room.
Yes, well, I've had even some reports from Australia that an elderly person in particular was actually exposed to this sort of Wi-Fi for a lot of time, and she was actually having symptoms of vomiting and severe dizziness. As soon as she installed the BluShield sensitive plug-in into her house, within 20 minutes all these symptoms disappeared. So it's just one example. It's transformed someone's life. Before, I've had people in Canada who live in their cars, and you've probably seen those silver blankets, the survival blankets. They can't get away without having one of those wrapped around them in the house, otherwise they just can't go into the house. So there's extreme sensitivities that some people have, to the point where it's making them extremely sick. And these are generally people, the elderly or children, or even women that are pregnant. People's who have chronic disease also are very, very sensitive to this sort of thing, because their immune system is already compromised, and they're now being exposed to EMF, which just adds to the burden on the body. So that's the sensitive aspect of it, where we cover with the BluShield Sensitive series. There's also the Classic, which is your middle of the range. It's about the same strength as the sensitive model, but generally for people that are in a fairly normal, healthy sort of lifestyle, may have Wi-Fi at home, don't tend to use the mobile too much, or the smartphones or what have you, but tend to be in a fairly normal, what I say normal EMF zone, is that they may not have a lot of EMF around them. So that's when we come to the Elite series, which is for the strong stuff. Okay, people that are on their computer all day, people that are on their smartphone a lot, whether it's making calls or just using the data. The data is actually far higher radiation than making a call. Probably not a lot of people know that, but if I didn't have a BluShield on me and I was using my smartphone, within 20 minutes I'm wiped out. And I'm not really that sensitive anymore. I used to be. But with the Elite model going, I can be on there for 3, 4, 5 hours and not really feel anything. So
I have noticed that with cell phones and portable phones. Can't hold them up to my head for too long. I start to get, I don't know, my ear starts to get really, really hot, and I start to get kind of like a bit of a headache. And it also makes me angry. It's a strange one. Like, I remember one time I almost like was yelling at a woman to just write down my email and email me because I couldn't talk to her on the phone, and she wouldn't.
Stress.
Yeah.
Stress body.
Yeah, but she was also a rambling new agey woman, and it was really effing me off in the conversation anyway. It was just worse than normal, you know.
Right. So, you know, with the onset of all these smart devices, there's of course been an increase in the amount of output of EMF. So therefore, we developed the Elite series, which is a lot stronger. Now, just of recent, in fact, the other day, we launched the Tesla series, okay, which is a multi-wave scalar output consisting of a wide spectrum of biocompatible frequencies. So the Tesla version is like probably about 30% stronger than the Elite series. So if one's looking at which one do I get, the Tesla series is offering the best protection from EMF on all levels, including 4G, whereas the Elite would offer quite a bit of protection against 4G, but not as good as the Tesla series. So if you've got a smart meter, if you've got Wi-Fi at home, you use your smart phone, you use your Wi-Fi devices, the Elite's great. If you live within a kilometre of a cell phone tower or any 4G output cell phone system.
So that includes everybody in Auckland?
Pretty much. Then the Tesla series would be the better option there, because it uses multiple waveforms to counteract the invasion of EMF on the body. So it's not actually blocking anything, Vinny. You can't.
Well, can I also make a point here? What these people from GeoVital in Austria have found out is that when you block signals, like they put up mesh or like paints that block the signals, what they found is they actually ping them. They make sure that they don't come at you, but they get pinged back twice as strong at somebody else. And if you've only got one wall blocked and you've got another signal coming in from behind you, it actually pings back double at you. So getting rid of the signal by blocking and deflecting it doesn't work.
No.
What they found is you either need to have it completely encapsulated, like you actually need to be in a full zone that cannot be penetrated, which is exactly expensive to do for your home. And this is in fact the principle that that BluShield follows, doesn't it? It's encasing you in a protective layer sort of thing.
Yeah, well, if you liken it, it's the signal that's given off from the BluShield that hits the body, because the body recognises it as natural in its emanations. It's not based on any technology that we have as wireless technology is, because that's way out of the human range. So it's this range of frequencies, and we're talking millions of frequencies here put out in this field. It's like can you imagine a static field going on near you? But it's very natural to the body. The body responds to that instead of responding to any other forms of radiation that may be near you or in your space.
Well, it's the same thing as frequencies with tuning forks. Whoever's got the strongest tuning fork, all the other forks are tuned to it.
That's right. They'll all start to resonate at that resonance or coherence. And that causes a positive response from the body. So we did actually verify these results through an independent lab using blood tests, live blood test, dark field microscopy. And we also saw a reduction in elimination of symptoms related to the EMF exposure. We also saw, people can go on the website and have a look at this, the red blood cells have changed completely. So the membrane the red blood cell membrane is quite a bit thicker, and the red blood cells are maintaining a more normal shape than previously.
Because normally what happens is they kind of get compressed and distorted under EMF pressure, and in some cases the nucleus ruptures, and that's when you get like blood cancer and whatnot.
Yeah, what we found is that the membranes in the red blood cells became very thin and started ghosting, what they call ghosting. They were just exploding as we watched them under the microscope. After a couple of months using the BluShield, of course, one would expect a change, but there was a very significant change. One change was that the membranes in the red blood cells had become normal, which were a lot thicker, and they weren't exploding anymore. And also the white blood cell count, the leukocytes in the blood, which are your immune cells. If there's too many, it's like the body's trying to fight something all the time, so it's constantly having to produce these white blood cells, and that takes energy. That's what makes people fatigued. So it sort of came down from 25 right down to 15 in the blood test, which means there's a normalization of the white blood cells as well. So the body's not responding as if there's something invading it. Yeah, so that was interesting. That surprised me, actually. I mean, well, I know we get great results and people really experience good things in the BluShield, but to actually see it scientifically was really something.
But of course, you can't claim that it's a cure or it works or anything, because what happens to everybody who claims that they've got a cure for something? Oh yeah, that's right. They get shut down by a federal government of some description, right?
Well, nothing's ever 100%, Vinny. You know, let's face it, it comes down to a lifestyle, what diet you're having, if you smoke or drink, how much sleep you get. There's a whole lot of factors, and we just can't pinpoint that for every single person. I mean, if they're looking after themselves and they're doing all the right things, and you use a BluShield, you've got to expect you're going to get good results. We've
Can I
done
make a
tests
point?
previously.
I'm sorry, you're talking about testing. Sorry, continue. I'm going to stop interrupting.
We previously did some urine tests, and that's up at the website too, and you can see by that we actually measured the organ function within the body. So when someone's under stress, the organs are under stress too, and they're not functioning as well. So when you relieve the environmental stress, which is from EMF, by introducing a BluShield, you actually cause the body to want to normalize. So the body has its own mechanism of maintaining an equilibrium or maintaining that level of health. Now that level of health varies with every individual, but by the same token, the body has a natural ability to maintain that level of health. And this is what the BluShield helps to do. The body does the healing or the restoration of normal health, but the BluShield is kind of like the catalyst. It's involved, but it's not used up.
I filmed a number of presentations last weekend for the New Zealand Journal of Natural Medicine, and I think there's, two of those presentations were quite relevant to this conversation, because first was Patrick from GeoVital talking about EMF, EMR, and geopathic stress. They're the people who can, if you're building your home, they measure your home beforehand. They've got all these devices and everything to work out what you're dealing with. And right. What he said, and I think this is actually quite important because it goes back to what you were talking about just before, is that this is only one tool, only one thing you can do to protect yourself from it. And in some cases, sometimes you actually just have to move house because there's no way of protecting yourself, because you might be on a fault line or on a water vein or something like that, with all these different metals underneath the ground with fast moving pressure and water and everything going through them. Ancient peoples never lived on water veins or fault lines or anything for that very reason, but they forgot.
Stress.
Yeah.
Yep.
But they completely forgot about it for some reason, and now built Los Angeles. So the other one I wanted to talk about, speaking of sociopathic stress. Oh wait, are we doing geopathic stress? Sorry, my problem. Speaking of, it's only one part of protecting your health, considering the vast array of health hazards we're doing, whether that be smoking or drinking, etc. Great guy in the Waikato, Dr. Sam Shea. He's the grandchild of the basically leading heart surgeon in Philadelphia from the 20s and 30s and whatnot. Real smart guy. And he's written a book, something along the lines of 10 tips to be healthy and not look like a health weirdo. And he's got this system whereby there's all these elements to your life, all these inputs and outputs and things of that nature that affect your health. And he notices that when people are unhealthy, they're either ignoring most of the health areas or only ignoring at least one or two of them, and have been healthy for quite a while and then suddenly start going downhill. And he's cornerstoned the balance elements, right? Everything that you actually really do need to look out for in quite a simplistic format. Really quite, in my opinion, probably the most interesting lecture I've seen in 2 years easily. Really, really stellar stuff in there. And that's what I think really ties in here, is that there's so many elements to your health. It's good to just be able to have at least one thing that takes care of one of those elements, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Right. Well, it's environmental with EMF, and with BluShield, I guess that's environmental. In the aspect of, environmental, you could argue the air quality, probably water quality. But to get your environment where you're living to be fairly stress-free and normal, I think, that's really important. Because, you spend a lot of your time in bed, about a third of your life sleeping. Where you're sleeping, you want to make it as comfortable as possible and as conducive to your health as possible. You don't want to be sleeping, right next to the TV or next to that digital clock radio near your head. Minimizing your radiation exposure is a good thing, and we do recommend to do that. There's certain beds out there with springs in them that tend to induce currents through them and cause problems. Electric blankets are a classic one. You can turn your electric blanket off, but it's still plugged into the wall. It's still going to have a voltage on that bed. So you've got 240 volts underneath your body all night. That's not exactly going to be good for your body or for your immune system, because it's another stress on your body. So minimizing, I think, Vinny, is part of the process in looking at your environment and getting that one thing, like you said, at a good space. Yeah,
well, I suppose that's all you can do, really, is kind of nail down these little health problems one at a time. It's like all the problems in your life. Sometimes you feel like you're playing whack-a-mole, but every now and again, you knock one of those moles down for good. And I think BluShield's really been really good for that. I've noticed with my aggro kind of thing, Mark, my mate told me to unplug my BluShield for a week and see what it did. That's what happened. I got, yeah. I
can see the horns growing then, Vinny.
Yeah. That's nasty, bro.
So, even myself, friend of mine's involved with this and looking into this technology, and it's been looking into it for about 26 years. Some people say, well, doesn't your body get so strong in that you can sort of fight it off yourself? Well, not really. We need assistance from the BluShield. I used to be extremely electrosensitive, and I guess over the years from using BluShield, my immune system is a lot better and I'm a lot more resilient to EMF, but I still need it when it's there. And if I don't have it, boy, do I notice it, And it, as you said, it just could be a few days without your BluShield. I have a portable one on me when I go driving or go out from the house, so I'm always covered. If you don't have a plug-in in the home and a portable when you go out, what's happening is that your home's protected, right? So it's like a warm shower. You're in that warm shower, it's great, you feel good. As soon as you step outside that area and you don't have a protection or you don't have a portable, you're stepping out into a cold shower. It's like all these stresses that are out there, are going to affect you. So the idea is to have a plug-in the home, your office, wherever you spend time. home is number one, important. Number two, your workplace. Number three is your going out in the car. These electric cars are notorious for putting out huge fuels. Any car is going to put out massive amounts of EMF from the ignition system.
Well, and also a lot of the new cars,
fatigued.
and a lot of the new cars have plenty of gadgets and like volume dials on the steering wheel and all of this jazz. However, they do often now, especially the new cars, have USB sticks in them. And I gave my you sent me a USB BluShield like years ago, and I gave that to my mate Jono because he's got a little USB stick in his car while he's driving around.
Right. Well, we are developing another one for cars, and we do notice we're going to be doing some tests in the States.
Well, I put it in a cigarette lighter.
Cigarette lighter one, before and after oil quality. We also notice that there's an increase in power and fuel consumption. Fuel consumption has decreased, sorry. So you get better power, but you get less fuel consumption. So we're going to be doing some tests over the next 6 months to determine what's actually happening. Yeah. So we're not sort of bringing it out yet, but once we've tested it, we'll be releasing a new one for the car, which will protect the people in it, but also enhance the performance of the car. So what this is doing at a molecular level, it's kind of reducing the friction in the engine with the oil. So the oil becomes more fluid, and also the fuel must be broken down at a molecular level to burn more efficiently. So you get more power, you get better efficiency, less friction, so therefore less wear and tear in the engine.
Well, I think that might be a similar effect that happens because they have neodymium magnets. A couple of guys have realised that if you put them on the fuel intake before it squirts into the carburetor, it magnetically charges the particles and it gives them more power and more efficiency. So I'd imagine altering the frequency around which these things enter in a passive way might make differences like that as well. Unfortunately, Mark, we've run out of time just now. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to get yourself a BluShield, go to thevinnieeastwoodshow.com and click on the BluShield banner there today. Thank you very much, Mark, for your time, and we'll see you after the break, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, Vinnie. It's been a pleasure.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Vinnie Eastwood Show. Special guest now is Evelyn Gilbert from Aotearoa, A Wider Perspective. Evelyn, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Vinnie.
What have you got for us today?
Yesterday morning when I woke up, I was reading my news, and there was this news about explosions that scared Aucklanders. And during the day, what came out was that apparently the Air Force had been dropping bombs in their training area north of Auckland. What turned out was that they were dropping Mk-82 bombs. And Mk-82 bombs are probably the most common bombs used in carpet bombing in places such as Afghanistan and Iraq. But what is interesting, it is called Mk-82 500 kilo bombs, and these bombs are from American. They come from America, and America doesn't make any of its bombs anymore without depleted uranium. Now, I am not actually sure whether I can prove this, but according to Countercurrent website, which is countercurrents.org, an article that appeared on the 10th of October 2007 was told about all the ordnance that was used in Afghanistan and Iraq, and they said that basically all the bombs that were used, and they name the Mk-82 bombs, were used, and that all of these bombs were lined with depleted uranium, and that makes sense because to get a bomb of a reasonably small size, so you can put lots of them in a plane for carpet bombing, needs very dense kind of material to get that kind of weight. And so it is very unlikely that, especially for New Zealand, an MK82 without depleted uranium would have been sold to us. Of course, I don't talk about that much. But the video material showed telltale signs of whitish clouds before blowing up the native soil where it was exploded in. And that's usually a sign of burning depleted uranium. What I would like, and what I'm this is one of the reasons why I wanted to be on your show and talk about this, is because I would like to know if there's people out there who actually have access to that area and who can measure the fallout for radiation levels. Because, of course, we're supposed to be this nuclear-free country, but it's, again, as I said before, very unlikely that they will send us bombs made to our sensitivities without depleted uranium, especially because officially the United States Army and the Pentagon have the stance that depleted uranium is not dangerous, is not radioactive, which it is. It's got low radiation, low long-term radiation damage. It doesn't show up unless breathed in directly until 5 to 10 years after it has penetrated the body. But especially in areas like Fallujah, where of course the two sieges of Fallujah were fought or were executed on the poor people who lived there, there is such a high rate of birth defects and deformities and other kinds of radiation-related illnesses that it is unconscionable that these bombs would be used here. I mean, it's unconscionable that they would be used in Iraq or Afghanistan, where they have now a pollution that will last 4.5 billion years, because that's the half value of depleted uranium radiation. Yeah, that's what we're looking at, and I'm very curious and very keen on getting in touch with people who would be able to help out in measuring the fallout and what is left on these areas. You have to keep in mind that in Iraq, according to the specialist of the United States Army, Doug Rocky, at the time, he wrote the books, he wrote the manuals on how to get rid of heavy metals, depleted uranium, poison gas, and other weapons of mass destruction. And what he told me in a conversation I had with him in 2009 is again that there is no ammunition made without depleted uranium. What's worse, the Americans give it away. They don't even sell it anymore. They give it away. They gave it to all the bases of operational bases in Afghanistan, and so they're really, really keen on spreading this stuff around the globe as much as possible. And again, New Zealand is not an exclusion zone or anything.
Well, can I make a point here? As somebody who has experience in the black market, being arrested for cannabis when I was a young man, I've realised that the easiest way to get banned substances used is to just not tell the authorities. You know, that's it. And if the authorities don't know about it, they don't inform the public, and then the people don't know about it, and whammo, you've got off scot-free.
That is undoubtedly true, especially since we're not talking about where we buy our ammunition, and where and how this is being imported in. What's more, John Key, of course, signed us on to NATO in a new treaty. This was not an extension on an old treaty. In June 2012, he signed us on to NATO. And every NATO, the United States, UK, France, they're all producing depleted uranium weaponry. So it's everybody who has nuclear power stations has depleted uranium they can't get rid of, and they make weapons with it. This was used in Kosovo. It was used in Serbia. It was used it's used everywhere. In Libya, and of course, we are now part of NATO. We're not members, no, we're partners. Which, of course, when you look at what that means, is that you're actually a member of a group, and it's just a different name. But we are, in fact, according to NATO website, we are supplying troops to NATO, and we also supplied a frigate to NATO. Temana, a frigate, was in the coast before Somalia. They were allegedly, of course, helping against pirates. But what it is that we're training with NATO, which means that there is no way we can escape depleted uranium weapons.
Well, the problem with that, I think, is what was it? Was it Nikki Hager who actually exposed that our frigates and everything were being used for quote unquote security in inverted commas for the original Iraq invasion? Well, not the original Iraq invasion, the Iraq invasion 2 under George W. Bush in 2003. And incidentally, they used so much depleted uranium during that conflict on the ground that now a quarter of all Iraqi children are born deformed, and when parents have their child come out, the first question they ask is not the most common one. Is it a boy or a girl? It's, is it normal? All right, so this is the danger of depleted uranium, ladies and gentlemen. It is the gift that keeps on giving. And it actually, I believe I interviewed... I'm not sure if it was Bob Powell or something. I forget his name, but he used to work for the military and studied depleted uranium intensively. And it's one of the worst, most toxic, disgusting, horrific weapons that has ever been devised. It is literally a waste product that they pop into weaponry, and it contaminates areas. And I think that's actually probably one of the intentions of depleted uranium weapons by those in the know. This is just my theory, of course, that they want to contaminate areas where human settlement won't really be possible anymore. And in fact, it'll help to cram us all into megacities because you won't be able to grow anything without it being contaminated.
Well, what is interesting and what you should know about depleted uranium, that it behaves like a ceramic product, and so when they use it like, for example, as a cone. When it falls down or when it's being shot at a target, it starts to burn, and the depleted uranium evaporates into nanoparticles, which are then being breathed in, which are then spread throughout the environment. In fact, they have found depleted uranium nanoparticles on the space ship, the space station, and they have found it as far away as Australia. And it's not going to stop at the airspace of New Zealand just because we are a nuclear-free country. We are no longer a nuclear-free country. So I think that is something we really have to keep in mind, and especially now that John Key is in the United States, speaking with the Secretary of Defense, with John Kerry, with Janet Cullen, the head of the Federal Reserve, the chairman of the Federal Reserve. He's talking with all the people, the right people that might want to use our young people as cannon fodder in the next godforsaken war somewhere. Vinny.
Well, of course it's godforsaken because, hey, you know. I'm just quite concerned here. So they're dropping bombs with depleted uranium in them just north of Auckland, right?
Well, what they said was that
hold on. Let me stop you. Is that just what they said, or is this what a source has told you?
No, this is...
Because officially there's no explanation for the booms.
No.
They're like, I don't know what it is.
What they said is that Number 5 Squadron in the Kaipara bomb range was conducting trials for the P3K Orion, dropping MK82 500-pound bombs. And what is interesting about the ones they've used is that usually the sound carries between 5 and 10 kilometers, but this is 70 kilometers away from where people were complaining about the noises. So that's a strange extension of the radius of noise that they were making. The thing to remember is that in order for a bomb to have a certain weight, it has to have a certain amount of heavy condensed material. Now, either they're using lead, which I don't think so, or they're using depleted uranium. And when I spoke with Doug Rocky, he said that basically there is no more depleted uranium-free bombs because they've got plenty of it. It does a wonderful job of penetrating, destroying, and polluting. And they're not going to make, in New Zealand they've got 10 bombs, they need 10 bombs to explode on their beaches. They're not going to not put the depleted uranium in it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be 500-pound bombs anymore. They'd be 300-pound bombs. So I think that what is interesting is that MK82 they're explaining here are common all-purpose aircraft munition, and they contain 160 pounds of explosives, which is, of course, far under the 500 pound that these bombs weigh. That we have been using them since the 1956 Malaysian conflict. Now, they still have the name MK82, but they are built vastly different to the 56 bombs at the time. It's just, it's like having a Volkswagen. We still have Volkswagens, but you can't compare them to the Volkswagens Hitler built. Or, to name another one of those nice guys.
It's fairly difficult to compare things to Hitler nowadays, because every time somebody compares anybody to Hitler, they go, it's been done to death, it's been done to death. It's like, well, hold on a second. Is there a better example of some kind of a demagogue person whipping everybody up into a murderous frenzy and dumbing everybody down and taking away everybody's rights? Is there a more widely known figure that kind of fits those parameters? I don't think so.
Now, he most certainly was the most published. I think what not a lot of people know, of course, is that Stalin killed about 20 million of its own people. So he would go for a good one.
Oh, yeah. And then you talk about the Holocaust, it's like they killed 6 million Jews. Well, hold on. Stalin just in one little campaign confiscating the grain from Ukraine killed 7 million plus, and they had to resort to cannibalism. They didn't even build camps for them, anything. They just starved out all the people in the freaking country.
Yep, okay. That's what they did.
Nobody talks about that, on the other hand.
Everybody, that's interesting.
Oh, the Ukrainians, there's millions more of them,
What's more, they're trying to kill 8 million Russian Ukrainians at the moment.
Well, they're not just trying to kill them. We're talking about the onset of World War III, according to John Eisen from Uncensored. He's been the last 3 I've never seen him do this before in all the years I've known him, but 3 covers in a row have been about trying to prevent World War III. It's his absolute obsession at the moment to try and prevent World War III. And as far as obsessions go, it's probably the healthiest one I've ever freaking heard of.
The thing is, according to the definition of a world war, 6 countries have to be at war with each other. There have to be 6 areas of battle. We've got Somalia, Libya, Syria, Ukraine, America involved in that, United Kingdom involved in that. I reckon we're meeting at this moment the criteria of a world war. It's just, can we contain it not to become much bigger? Iraq is being destroyed at the moment by groups financed absolutely with billions of dollars by Saudi Arabia, by United States. So we're in a world war. It's just that it's not in our country yet, except, of course, they're now starting to throw depleted uranium. Except, of course, in November we had a military training exercise that was training for a war crime, namely deposing a sovereign leader in a sovereign nation. So, as far as I'm concerned, we are in a world war.
Well, and according to the definition, sure. But then if you have a look at the World Health Organization's definition of a pandemic, it's a disease that's in more than one country. So, by that definition, every common cold is a pandemic. And not to poo-poo what you're saying, though, it's totally relevant. The scary thing is, of course, that it's about the media at the end of the day, isn't it? How do you know if a world war is on? If the media tells you it is. How do you know if a world war's not on? If the media doesn't tell you it is.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's basically the end of the story. I mean, you take a look back at our last World War, allegedly, World War II, and you think about the amount of propaganda, the amount of news coverage. It was a daily, constant update type thing to keep everybody in that little closed fear paradigm of war. There's war everywhere, etc. Be afraid, be very, very afraid, and also donate war bonds. Now, you fast forward to today. We've got wars everywhere. We've got the media hyping it up and talking about it. Be afraid, and by the way, buy stocks on Wall Street still. Has much actually really changed other than the appearance of war?
Your guess is as good as mine. I don't think so. We're still being hyped. We're still being propagandized. We're actually being propagandized more so, I think, than before the Second World War. Because the mainstream, global mainstream media is really, I mean, at the time you had, Labour had a newspaper, the other parties had a newspaper. When I grew up, we had radio stations, representing, different groups in society. So you had different choices you could make as what you wanted to watch. You know, the good news is that we now, of course, have internet.
Conveniently,
and we can inform ourselves.
Well, that's happening under the assumption that you even get to the point. I was just thinking about it the other day. It took me getting arrested and nearly 10 people coming up to me saying things about 9/11 and the drug laws and all of that kind of stuff, and going through all that business myself. Before I even wanted to start looking into the truth and start thinking about it. And then it was just like somebody leading me down the garden path, like Alex Jones, for example, you know, telling me all of this stuff, scary business, and radically informing me, and just basically making me really angry and depressed, and then going out there and getting it done. I can't actually go up to somebody and encourage them and just say, hey, bro, you know, this is what you need to do. It's real fun. It's real awesome. It's real fun. No, it's like, hey, bro, this is going to totally mess up your life and destroy everything you ever thought was real. But however, if you don't do this, unfortunately, you're going to get exterminated or become a slave, and so will your children.
And that is what will happen.
Yeah. Don't have much of a choice in the matter. Now, Evelyn, I believe you have customers there in the shop there, don't you? So if you want to go and tend to them, just leave the Skype on and put it on mute for another few minutes, and then I'll stop the recording and get off the air by myself, because I have a few things that I want to say here. So, Evelyn, thank you very much for your time. Aotearoa, a wider perspective.wordpress.com is her website, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to the Vinnie Eastwood Show. Now, this is a broadcast that is supported 100%, well, I wouldn't say 100%, probably about 90%, by listeners and donations, subscriptions, that kind of thing. So if you want to see this kind of broadcast continue, and the power's totally in your hands, ladies and gentlemen. I'm simply here, cap in hand, doing community service and just hoping that the community values it enough to give of themselves so that I can simply continue to do it. The point of expansion is very difficult to achieve. I would love new computers, mostly assistants would be preferable, like having somebody to come into the studio every day and do 40 hours a week, etc., and go for their life. What's problematic about this all is nobody seems to recognize that we have so many problems, right? It's like that. You walk around generally, just in the streets or whatever. You ask people, hey, do you think 9/11 is an inside job? Hey, do you think this, that, or the other? And, the stupidity. I mean, it's like Einstein said, there's no limits to the universe and human stupidity. And I'm not so sure about the former. And that's what I fear, is that foolish people who are uninformed can be easily taken for a ride, can be manipulated, can be told to vote for this party or that party or the other one. And this is coming into the New Zealand election year, and I just found out that the Internet Party, this one's going to be, I'm totally against state surveillance and totally for freedom and free speech and exposing the corruption and everything. And guess what they have as the environment policy? You guessed it, Agenda 21. Which will undo any good that they want to do. All right? That's basically the end of the story. And somebody was like quite surprised when they told me that. And I said, well, what do you expect of a political party that's fronted by Bomber Bradbury? Less socialism? Give me a break. So, but the media won't tell you that. You'll hear that on this show. You won't hear it on any other show in the freaking country. In the freaking world. Nobody's talking about this. I am. And I'm not saying like, I'm so good, I'm so fabulous, because I'm talking about it and everything else that, full of myself and whatnot. I'm just saying the freaking reality here, ladies and gentlemen. You actually do have to support me. Alright? Morally. Obligatorily. Because there's no other freaking choice. Just like waking up. You don't really have a choice. You have to do it sooner or later. And I'll tell you what, if I've got a number of goals and plans. I want to be like, more or less, I want to go toe-to-toe with the mainstream media and beat them. I want to make sure that you, the people, have real information with which to base your decisions on, to base your votes on, to base your public policy, your council policy on. Everything that governs your life is circling around how informed or uninformed the people are. And I want to make sure that you've at least got the information so you can make a choice about whether or not you want to be informed. Once I'm gone, if my YouTube channel packs up and the radio show no longer exists, you, the public, and the activists that I've had on the show for years and years will no longer have that platform, will no longer have that choice. I certainly hope you see that as terrible a prospect as I do. Not for your selfishness, but for your people, for broader humanity. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vinnie Eastwood Show, the little Kiwi Collaborator episode that we've got going on here. In studio, we have Jeanette. Welcome to the show.
Oh, hello, Vinnie. Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is you do, please.
Well, I'm here to talk about the Green Cross in Auckland today, and I'm the new founder of the new Auckland Green Cross, which is a medical support group for cannabis users in Auckland. We're in West Auckland on Portage Road, and every Sunday from 2 to 4 p.m. we run a support group for people to talk about the difficulties they're having with their illness, the way cannabis works for them, the ways they might use cannabis, and ways that we can possibly develop a resource in the future to give to doctors, because one of the greatest problems is doctors do not understand why their patients are using cannabis.
Well, how could they not? Wouldn't the patients just say, it helps them with pain, and the doctor would just go, oh, well, that's interesting?
Well, they go, well, no, that's illegal, and here have 2 more Panadol. Or codeine.
How many?
Or tramadol. Or depending on what the pain level. Which is unfortunate, because one of the things that I've gained from visiting doctors in America is the opiate use and other prescribing can be reduced and used in combination with cannabis. So less drugs are required.
Well, down from how many to how many kind of thing?
Oh, people can probably halve their dose on some of the stronger narcotics, because the cannabis, whether it's smoked or eaten or vaporized or sprayed, works on the same neural pathways and receptors in the brain. So instead of having a high dose of codeine, you can have a mid-sized dose of codeine and some marijuana, which is, maybe in a cookie form at night, is really beneficial.
Well, I think all cells, when we're born, have cannabis receptors in them, specifically for this purpose, because the cannabinoid molecule is like in my opinion, it's a transmutable molecule that can more or less mimic most chemicals, vitamins, minerals, etc. Known to man. So whenever the cell sends a signal into it, it sort of transmutes its makeup somehow and then gives the body what it needs. Or at least in a lot of the cases that I've seen with the high potency cannabis oil that Rick Simpson has done, which has been... I think the term is a panacea or a cure-all or something of that nature, whether it's depression, cracked spine, many things, including cancer, of course.
Well, that's a good description, and the more medical term for the way the cannabis affects the brain is has its own separate pathway, and I think animals do too, called the anandamide pathway, which is a Persian word or name for bliss. So I would suggest that people have been consuming cannabis and animals, eating it raw, as well as using it in poultice forms, the herb as leaf, as tea, as flour with the seed, because it really is one of those very versatile herbs or plant that everything can be used. So even the stalks could be burnt as firewood. And so, and then it crosses into little receptors in the brain that are specifically designed to receive THC or CBDs, which, treat pain and they treat anxiety. They work slightly differently, but they work the same as the drugs that doctors prescribe, but they have a different pathway. So it's like a different lane on the motorway, all going in the same direction, all doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's kind of like what the doctors are doing is they're saying, okay, let's open up a line of traffic and then just pulling out into oncoming traffic and then just ploughing through them with a Humvee or a bulldozer or something like that in order to get the neural pathway frickin' cured. Except they never cure you, they can only treat you, for which will produce a whole lot of side effects, which they also can't cure. They can only treat you by making you take 2 medications instead of 1, and then that multiplies, and so on and so forth until you're dead. And poor.
Well, I think it possibly works more like a motorway with 5 lanes, and that 3 of them have got the X above them that you're not allowed to use, because those are the cannabis useful pathways, but we're not allowed to use them because they're illegal, and every single piece of traffic is travelling on 2 lanes, just ramming the crap out of each other, congested as hell. Ultimately no solution, because you'll find a lot of people go back to their doctor again and again for a different cocktail of pills because these don't work anymore, and that's exactly what's happened to the receptors in the brain. They reach a certain level and they can't make any more or close anymore, so I need a new pill. Whereas I think by moving to cannabis, it is less harmful, especially if you're eating it. How can that be wrong?
A friend of mine once talked about this, actually, that he had trouble eating, like a very skinny guy, and he just didn't have any appetite. And then he used the cannabis, and what it did is he said that it activated his Dorito receptors.
It's a good story. I heard about another friend of yours who has a great deal of difficulty through MS.
Oh, yeah, Barry. I was walking up Queen Street this one time, and I think this is kind of encapsulates the whole cannabis and medical treatment. Because we're not talking about, let's get it legal, let's all get high. We're talking about medical treatment for medical patients, right? That's what Green Cross is about, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And I was walking up Queen Street with Barry, and interestingly enough, in the CBD, that's where Queen Street is, because we're talking about the CBD. And then so he ingested, well, let me back up. Walking up, he's very, very slow walking, got multiple sclerosis, kind of a pain to move, like literally, just a pain to sort of breathe, pain to move at all. The guy has to sit down every couple of steps, more or less. That's what he feels like doing, but he had to keep walking. And I had to slow down and walk about maybe a tenth of my normal speed just to make sure that he didn't, get totally left behind. And I asked him, Barry, do you need a sesh, bro? Do you want some weed? So I rolled him a joint and smoked it up. And I had to try and catch up with him, It was like all the pain goes away, the inability to move goes away, the fatigue goes away, the stress goes away, and just the pain of life goes away. Had we been busted by a cop at that point, not only would it have totally blown my high, but we would have been clamped in handcuffs and stuck in the back of a police car and then gone through processing and fingerprinting and all of that kind of stuff where they take everything off you. It's incredibly stressful. It's actually probably one of the most stressful incidents that'll ever happen to you, ladies and gentlemen, is being arrested, having all your freedoms taken off you.
You get used to it.
Yeah. I mean, we think we don't have any freedoms now, and, technically we don't, because we're not really willing to defend most of them with force, because the police will just take them away by force, won't they? It's the only thing that's really open left. But anyway, you're in pain. This is what occurred to me, is that during this time, Barry would be in pain. They would have confiscated any guns that he had, and he would have been in pain from that moment onwards and unable, more or less, to move. And at the same time, he would be required to go to court and or defend himself and or plead guilty while he's in pain, and also have to take time off work as well as all of that jazz, okay? And I thought to myself, how would the law actually help people like Barry? And the answer is it doesn't. It doesn't care about them, because the pharmaceutical industries are making a hell of a lot more money off of selling you painkillers that can kill you than they are about being, okay with cannabis, which has never killed anybody in 10,000 years.
Well, interestingly enough, the Green Cross has been around in New Zealand for quite a number of years in different locations with different front people. One of the first people to start a Green Cross was Greg Saw, and his was AIDS patients and terminal cancer. And the first letter he wrote to Peter Dunn was rejected as, "This is garbage." And that's about 12 years ago. I've got a copy of the letter from 2002. And unbelievably, Peter Dunn's still sitting as an Associate Health Minister in Parliament today, and he's blocked every possible attempt that any person's ever made to receive cannabis as medicinal. And people have had broken backs, lost their jobs, lost their livelihood, and yet they're open to the police seizing everything they own, coming into their house. These are people who are in wheelchairs. They're vulnerable, they're in bed, they have no limbs, they may be amputees, they are maybe suffering seizures, depression, anxiety, all sorts of conditions that are always exacerbated by the police and the law as it stands. And I think that's been, just unbelievable that it was 1996 in California that medical marijuana became available and legal, and that's going to be only 2 years away. It'll be 20 years, and we're nowhere, and we're still subject to Billy's on home detention. Billy McKee from Green Cross. Just give a bit of a background about him to the audience. There, he got a leg shorn off by a drunk driver, and now he's using cannabis for the pain, because you've got phantom leg and everything like that. Of course, when you're walking around in an artificial leg, your stump gets really sore, and he's found that just taping raw cannabis but to his stump, it reduces the inflammation and actually takes the pain away. And I've found that myself. If I've had pains, abrasions, or things of that nature, it actually stings, very similar to when you put iodine drops onto a wound, kind of thing. If you put cannabis into it, and it heals up really, really quickly. I found, especially infected areas, because it's a really, really good viricide in that respect. I think maybe I don't know.
That's total speculation on my part. But
lovely astringent, maybe.
Yeah, but as I say, you can't argue with results. You can't argue with Billy's results. And when I was at the Normal Conference, I was talking about this, about how we've got all the facts and figures and everything that we need for the cannabis movement to actually really make a good case. The problematic thing is that we don't have enough cynical marketing scum, basically spinning it so that people who don't care about the truth, don't care about the facts, will instead make an emotional decision to actually care about people who are in pain.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
That was my thought. Now, it sounds really cynical and it sounds really evil, but at the end of the day, it's about stopping people from suffering, you know.
Well, I'm definitely not part of the cynical marketing scum, but I have discovered something.
I was talking about myself more or less.
I didn't say that either.
They need to take the advice of cynical marketing scum like me.
Well, speaking of cynical marketing scum, what I have discovered is that the not restaurant brands, not Pizza Hut. It's not Pizza Hut.
Could I actually finish first? Because I was thinking about a great picture, this is the marketing thing. Billy McKee sitting there in his wheelchair, one leg, having a joint or something like that. Maybe not having a joint, actually. Just in pain. And just look at him, imagine him. And I'm a cripple, not a criminal.
Absolutely. Well, the group that gathers together in on Sundays in Auckland, West Auckland on Portage Road, called the West Auckland or New Auckland Green Cross Support, it's a big mouthful. We're Cannabis Users Support Group. And it's not a dispensary, it's not a place that you can come and smoke cannabis, nor is it a place that we sell cannabis, but we are trying to get together to do a study where we can, over a period of time, record how cannabis has been beneficial to us. It has to have medical records to support it, and evidence that the cannabis has not deteriorated your condition and hopefully been beneficial to you. And it hasn't been done because you can't get ethical approval in New Zealand to study cannabis, which is an illegal drug, because you can't source it, and because it's illegal you can't make it reliable in its strength or potency or even strain. So these are all issues that we're lagging behind America massively, but we don't even know. We've had Peter Dunn blocking the dunny, and you know what is on top of the blockage?
What's on top of the blockage?
A lot more shit.
Can we say that under FCC regulator? Oh yeah, that's right. We can.
It's only poos.
Yeah. It's only poos.
Yeah, so we've had a blocked dunny, and we've had 12 plus years of stuff on top, the unmentionable. For the
Indigenous New Zealanders and Australians, dunny means toilet. For those of you in the international audience who won't respect the common nomenclature, and we have a politician of said name. Well, it's actually done. It's actually done. He's done by name, but dunny by reputation. And if we could just think about this for a moment. You're talking about emotional appeal to people. What if we had all these people who are in pain a lot of the time, door knocking, and everybody in his electorate going, please don't vote the dunny back in. He destroyed me life. Look at me. Look at my kids.
Well, I'm glad you find it amusing, but it is damn serious. And, I think if he was to go, there could be some movement in politics, I'm getting constipated here with these jokes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's an unintentional thing. I call them unintended consequences because there's several layers of consequence that you don't really know until you kind of peel back the layers of it. Anyway, we're talking about trying to get dunny out of the bit. Here we go, we'll go in again. It's circular reasoning because it's circular reasoning. And if there's a blockage, you can't actually go full circle. That's why we're stuck on the topic of the dunny.
Moving on with the Green Cross, which is the scumbag, cynical marketing. Just recently I was trying to, get the Auckland Green Cross going again because 2 years ago one of the really key people involved with Auckland Green Cross died. So with that sad and unfortunate death, it seemed that the Green Cross wasn't going to be a viable option to even patients because the police were harassing him at the time of his death. The people who were supplying the medical marijuana that were grown with full knowledge of the health ministry, and everyone had been written to, doctors in the neighbourhood were aware, patients had been to doctors, the police closed the operation down, and that was that. So legally everybody has conspired in every possible way to deny people medical use, and I'm not going to take that chance with the Green Cross here, but we know that people are accessing cannabis for their medical use, and all we want to do is help support them with their doctors, and ultimately support them, educate their doctor to how it's beneficial to them, to create just understanding is the first step. Now the second thing, that in doing this I discovered that the pharmacies that we've known as Radius and Unichem are about to rebrand themselves as the Green Cross Health, which I'm actually not going to let them steal my name, or Auckland Green Cross name, or Levin Green Cross name, or Billy McKee's name, or anybody who's a patient of New Zealand. Green Cross deserves to have Green Cross as a recognised and international brand name. So there is going to be a little legal case coming up, and I will keep you informed.
Well, you know, I think at the end of the day, you should be quite cross that they're trying to steal the name Green Cross off you.
I'm very cross.
And then might be setting the mood for just a little litigation, you know?
A little litigation could go a long way.
Yeah, like the Dunny.
Oh no, we're back to
No, he goes for a long time. This is about a decade or so.
I have sought a legal opinion. I've engaged with a lawyer to do the research needed, and I'm not of a legal mind, but I'm pretty sure that using the name Green Cross when it already is in existence with the Green Cross in green in 3 different places in New Zealand in various organisations in various forms is a clear breach. But not only is it a clear breach of our name, it's also going to be a confusion to any person who's already been a patient of the Green Cross. They're going to stumble into the chemist and go, "Hello, can I have 100 of something strong?" And I don't know how often that should happen, because that's going to be embarrassing for both people. And the third is, it's just bullying. It's just a big corporate thing, thinking that these little guys don't have any kind of legal nous, and they wouldn't even know. And we can steal their name. And I don't think so.
Well, while you were talking there, something occurred to me. It's completely unrelated. What do you normally fill a dummy with?
Water and toilet paper.
If you say so. It usually is accompanied by something else. And in fact, the Parliament has turned into a rather hotbed of piping systems that make sure things are funnelled in certain directions. Isn't it any wonder that one of the central party figures is a man named Oni?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not surprising.
I'm just making these crappy jokes about it because I just don't like the joke.
I know.
In fact, I have an anecdote. I have a real anecdote.
His dunny leaks.
Dunny leaks? Oh my god.
It's
Is it that he smokes Dunny Red?
I think so.
No? Okay. Well, apparently he takes payoffs from tobacco and alcohol companies. A couple of people have said to me that they've got the documentation, reputable people. I can't reveal the sources as yet. But you see the competition, you see the connection, you see smoking and you see intoxication. There's 2 things that people use for recreational cannabis. Am I correct? So therefore these companies would pay somebody to keep their competition off the marketplace.
Well, it seems to me remarkably ignorant of what's a global phenomena and has been happening for 20 years. That I know it's a 12-hour flight to LA and other places where there are more cosmopolitan, like-minded people, but I'm sure Peter Dunn has to be aware of something useful in some person, some family in his neighbourhood using medical marijuana. He can't claim to not know, and as a lawyer, ignorance is no defence. So, you know, maybe that man should be forced from Mr. McCready to stand up and take his medicine.
Hey, yeah, well, in fact, that comes to a point. I was just thinking, what Graham McCready has done is he's actually opened the board for private prosecution against corrupt politicians, okay? This is landmark.
And won.
And won. Against somebody who I hate almost as much as I hate... In fact, I definitely hate him more, actually. John Banks. High-level Freemason. Not the reason I hate him. It's just coincidental. And I'd be very, very interested to see just how many lawyers and judges and etc. who might be punishing him or maybe taking care of him while he's in prison. Members of the Brotherhood will make it a whole lot easier for him, including possibly just giving him home detention so he can sit at home with the internet in his frickin' mansion and maybe drive his Bentley around his yard or something like that when he needs to stretch his frickin' legs.
Women aren't members of that exclusive club, so I'm never likely to be invited. I never need to worry about these things. I think that's why. I don't. there's other things for me to worry about.
Well, there's the Order of the Silver Star, which was started up, I think, in the 1900s or something. Helen Clark's allegedly a member of that. But anyway, this isn't a talk about secret societies in which incredibly powerful people coincidentally belong to them and coincidentally turn out to be corrupt scum that run your country into the ground. No. This isn't a country. That's just a coincidence theory right there. Yeah. And what we're going to talk about is Green Cross and exactly how you can know a little bit more about it. And you have kind of classes. I'd like you to reiterate that. And also, if you have a website or some description that you can pop it up there, give it out to people.
Mm-hmm. Well, Green Cross is, this is like the phoenix of Green Cross revival. We are so serious about our name that I've employed somebody. Well, Green Cross has employed someone, and we are, registering ourselves again or making sure that our brand and name is ours. We're going to be open every Sunday, running a group, looking for people to be taking part in the study. And we have counsellors for people who have questions. And ultimately we'll be gathering data and helping you with support with your doctor, maybe having a meeting with your doctor at some stage, and using this data to form a study that says, cannabis is beneficial in different areas. So because we're not a big group yet, we've already realised that there's sort of 3 different categories that people use marijuana for. And one is things like congenital birth defects. So you're in pain from birth, you've had a short leg and something that's just not ever going to heal. So that's a really big group. The second is pain, people who've got pain conditions, phantom limbs, fibromyalgia, recovering from injuries, and they've been on other medication, they're reducing. That's another group. And then there's also a mental health group where there's depression and anxiety and other disorders such as autism and Asperger's, where people find this really, really beneficial to their daily functioning. And because they've been using an illegal drug, it's often said to make it worse for them because it's a legal drug. It actually makes you more anxious and paranoid. But that is only true because your doctor's told you so, and he wants to put you back on Prozac.
Prozac, which has the wonderful side effect of murder-suicide, death, liver failure, dizziness, memory loss, etc., etc. And believe me, there's yet more, etc. You're listening to the Vinnie Eastwood Show. A very special guest is Jeanette Saxby, who teaches classes at the High Tea Cafe for Green Cross about how to cope with your pain, etc. And you can click on the High Tea Cafe banner on the homepage of the VinnieEastwoodShow.com.
And there's a Facebook page, Green Cross Auckland.
Okay, that'll be actually a good one. We'll put links to that on this archive as well. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening. And I hope you really take on board a whole lot of the things we've said, right? Because nobody wants to be like a dunny that is full of something. We'll be right back.